So we will give you an example. What is that? The closest thing that we know which is tending to limitless is space. Of course, science will say it's expanding space. Okay, for now, let's go with the fact that all that is there here, which accommodates, okay, avakasha pradatra, what a beautiful definition of space. That which accommodates everything is space, akashaha. So what about space? Well, the other four elements, so air, water, fire, prithvi, all the galaxies and the universes and the multiverses and the stars, all accommodated in space, correct? Then there is a pot community, okay, all the pots are there. Nobody has come to do shopping during lockdown, and the pots all have a human mind. So in the pot community, everybody is trying to keep themselves gainfully occupied. And then there are so many identities. So what is there is actually, there is one tiny pot, there is one huge pot also. Tiny pot always feels victimized. Why? Because everyone always makes fun of me, they ridicule me, and anything I say is never good enough. So I have to do something about my self-esteem. Very good. Then what about 5-liter pot? 5-liter pot is saying, look at me, I am the one, aham Ishwaraha. So I am Siddhaha, I am Buddhaha, I am the one. I will tell you what to do, what not to do, and you all have to listen to me. So there also identity is there. Okay. The space in the pot is now identified with the form. You're getting what I'm saying? The space in the pot is identified with the form. And then of course there is a crackpot also. So crackpot is saying, my God, you know, I have been through so much of depression and I have been on medication and it's just I can't go out of the house. So this is very, very depressing. Then two other pots are always fighting. I don't know why they got married, okay, but at least they found a good sparring partner. So all the time boxing ring is on, fighting, fighting, fighting. Children are also dragged. No, no, you are like your mother. No, no, you are like your father. So non-stop fighting is going on. Each of the pots has their own problems. Each of the one pot is a bhogi. Bhogi means I'm going to experience lot of things. So the pot goes from Chennai to the US, then gets stuck in the US. Okay, same pot space, but no, better lifestyle and everything. Then another pot says, no, I will go to Uttarkashi, I will meditate like the sadhus, and I will be a yogi. Very good. Then there is one other person who is lamenting on the fact that, oh, I cannot go for these morning walks. So my diabetes is, hitting the roof, and person is a rogi. Okay. So whether you are a bhogi, an experiencer, or a yogi, lot of practices so that I become Brahman, I become the Atma, or a rogi. Okay, I will pop some medicines, then I will be okay, or at least I will prolong my life. All different attempts are being made by all these three characters. The three characters, okay, which is really our different identities at different points in time. What is the truth of them? The truth of the pot space is that it is space. There is no inside and outside. On the face of it, you'll say, no, it is inside the pot, and then there is space outside the pot. But hello, space is space, the pot as though, okay, as though, I mean there is a proper form there, we're not saying it's a delusion. What we're saying is there is a form, but the form is not the absolute reality. It has a functional reality, and for that dharma is our framework. And whether the person is a jnani or an ajnani, a wise person or otherwise, dharma is the framework for functioning. There is no escape, no compromise on that. But what is the truth of the pot? Pot space is space. So no, I will discover the Atma within. Within or without, all that is here is the Atma. Different forms, different manifestations, as though, move, interact, connect with each other, move apart. All this drama goes on in life. But the truth of me, this struggling pot, along with being pot bellied, the truth of me is that I am that pot space. I am that which is ajam, avyayam. Because look at it, even if you're looking at the example of space, can water affect it? Oh, there are Brahmaputra, Assam floods, space is going to get wet. No. What about raging forest fire, bushfires? Space is going to get affected? No. Then there is, every year there is some talk of some meteorites affecting the earth, okay? And everybody say, oh, it is, what do you call that? Apocalypse, no? Like total disaster. My God, we should be prepared. The world is coming to an end. Hello, the Prithvi or any celestial body, whatever happens, okay, meteorites, they bang, or the supernova, galaxies are being destroyed, they are being formed, space remains unaffected. Everything is accommodated in space, and yet space remains unaffected. And the beauty is, the truth is, I, consciousness, okay, where consciousness is not a property of me. You know, we use the word consciousness or Chaitanyam little differently in Vedanta. In English, what will we say? Oh, is a person conscious or unconscious? Okay. And then, of course, psychology will bring in one other thing. No, unconscious, your very deep-rooted issues, and then subconscious and conscious. That's another framework. In Vedanta, when we use it, we cannot imagine something. Why? Because it is the very basis, that which exists always, Trikale api tishtati, that which is Chaitanyam, which means that if you're saying, oh, if it always exists, that means it is inert. Our experience of space is, it is Jadam, it is inert. No. It is conscious. It is aware of, is self-evident, ever shining. Swata prakasha, swata siddha. Self-established, doesn't need further validation, proof from anyone else. That is one's true nature, which is anantaha, limitless. So that's the vision. And therefore, when Bhagwan Krishna tells Arjuna, you know, later on he says, you are just a nimitta, you are just an instrument for something to happen. And then when he shows his Vishwarupa Darshanam, you know, his entire cosmic form, Arjuna cannot believe it, you know, all this protruding teeth. He's seeing all people are dying, they're almost dead. How is that possible? Because in Bhagwan, past, present, future, because very basis of time, everything is there. What? So what Bhagwan Krishna is saying is that you can see the truth of yourself. It's not samsara in the sense you cannot become the Atma, you're already the Atma, you're already Muktaha, but you still have Shoka, you still have sadness. And if you have this sadness, then There is a lot more to be said. We have just given you a glimpse of what the Atma really is. And so if you want to know more, then he says that there is what is called two lifestyles. Okay, so in third chapter he will say lokesmin, so Sri Bhagavan uvacha lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. Okay, you want to understand the Atma, you also want to figure out how to live your life. Well, I will tell you what. I will tell you something that was told a long time ago. Okay, Pura Prokta. And this is very beautiful. He addresses Arjuna with a word saying Anagha. Agha, is Papa. Okay, like a wrong, the Papa is Papa, okay, I cannot translate it. So the two ways, okay, we look at Papa. One is the result of a wrong action, and also the dukkha that you experience as a result of that wrong action. So he refers to Arjuna as Anagha. Anagha meaning you who is not touched by Papa. And then we have a particular philosophy which says that you are a sinner. And I'm sure that's not what Jesus said. Okay, so I will give Jesus benefit of doubt. But the way in which the religion makes one feel guilty from the time you're born. Can you imagine living with that guilt? That just the fact of my existence is not okay, it's not acceptable. And that no matter what I do, where I do, how I do, I am a papi. This is a terrible presentation. Okay, but anyway, thankfully, what are we saying? That you are Anagha. Bhagavan says you are Anagha, you are not a sinner at all. In fact, you're not touched by it. And for you to understand how to live in this world, for you to understand what the Atma is, in this loka, in this world, there is Dvividha Nishtha. Now, the word is Nishtha. It is not Nishtau. So it's not like there are two paths, okay? The goal is moksha. I want to be free from seeking. I'm seeking this, that, the other, okay? Which we already looked at earlier. I want to be free from seeking because I finally want to be home. I want to relax. This constant seeking, constant pursuit is increasing my BP and my diabetes and making me irritable, and I'm always fighting with people, I'm never dissatisfied, and so on and so forth. Dvividha Nishtha. The pursuit is that of moksha. I want to be free from seeking. I want to discover that I am that Atma which is referred to as Satchidananda definition. I want to see that I am the limitless, because all our attempts in all our pursuits is our struggle against having a limited body, right? I want to live longer. It's a struggle against the limitation of age. I want to be sharp, struggle against some limitation of the mind. I want to know when we are going to find a vaccine for corona. A struggle against the limitation of knowledge, or what in this case is ignorance. The struggle against limitations is non-stop, and I cannot reconcile myself saying that no, it's okay, you win some, you lose some, it's okay to struggle sometimes, it's okay not to struggle. Even if I say, okay, I abandon this struggle, I don't want to seek anymore, it will come up again and again. It will come up unless it is addressed. And this is the spiritual problem. Okay, the problem of sorrow, especially the fundamental sorrow that is there in every human heart, is not a psychological problem. It may present itself in a psychological way, that there is someone shouted at you, or you lost a job, or there was a huge argument. It presents itself topically as in the particular situation, but actually it's tapping into a deeper sorrow that is there in the human heart, the sorrow of a limited body. And the limited body, of course, can do great wonders and great glories. It has. Still, I fight against it because it's a limitless that is as though trapped in a human body. And I have to just see that I am free enough to have a human body. We have no problem with the body or the mind. So, twofold lifestyle. Okay, Nishtha is your pursuit, your lifestyle. What do you do for the entire day? Okay, or what is your commitment to? And he says, for those who are Sankhyas, for the ones who are renunciates, okay, or sadhus as in the ones who want to be on the fast track. All they want is moksha, they don't want anything else. Okay, for them it is Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga, okay, what else? What about the other people? They have other priorities in life. They want to have children. They want to live until their grandchildren are there. There's a certain joy of relating to your grandchildren where the pressure is not there of bringing up your children. Okay, so you, as a grandparent, you can afford to spoil your grandchildren. And what I mean is, you can thoroughly enjoy them. So many pursuits. Then, of course, the pursuit of wealth and security, property. I want to be involved with philanthropy as well. There's so much that needs to be done. Okay, then your lifestyle, because the pursuit is that of being a yogi, is what? Karma Yoga. So there is only two lifestyles that are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. People say, oh, there is what? You all might have heard this. It is not what Bhagwan Krishna has said. Okay, it might be somebody else's interpretation. For that particular time, for a reason, the person may have said it. That, oh, there are 4 types of yoga. Hey, hello, please look at Bhagavad Gita. It does not talk about 4 types of yoga. Only 2. Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. There too, they are not exclusive. Okay, the person who is a sannyasi has lived a life of Karma Yoga, and now it is spontaneous. We will, of course, probably tomorrow, we will go into the details of what that Karma Yoga is. That how can we enjoy the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita such that we can command a mind that is alert and relaxed and cheerful, and you can say, I can handle anything. That all that is here is sacred. I am connected to everything, and I do what I can. I accept what is given, and so on. We will see all those details tomorrow. Here, the lifestyle is about one pursuit, which is moksha, single-minded pursuit, or moksha along with other pursuits, which is your artha, kama, dharma. Of course, for a sannyasi, the person has already been there, done that. Okay, been there, done that, meaning has definitely pursued artha and kama with the framework of dharma, such that the journeys in each of these pursuits is complete. The security that artha was supposed to give, it honestly doesn't offer much security, but little, definitely can buy you financial independence, okay, such that you have the time available to pursue what you want. Artha is a valid pursuit, okay, the Veda recognizes it as valid. In fact, you want to increase your artha, well, the Veda has things to tell you. Kama, pleasure, again valid pursuit, wonderful pursuit, as long as it is in line with dharma. You want to pursue it, please go ahead, okay, go ahead, pursue all the pleasure that you want, just keep the dharma framework in mind. And the maturity that comes from having fulfilled a lot of your desires is very beautiful, you know. So the thing about desires, which is another myth about, related to the Bhagavad Gita, is Bhagavan Krishna says desires are bad, so I should not have desires. There are so many people who have tortured themselves because they think that desires are bad. But the beauty is, desire is Ichha Shakti. It is a Shakti that has been given to you by Bhagwan. You walk into the supermarket, anything and everything you see, oh, I want that, I want that. You actually went only to buy a toothpaste, and then you came back with a bill totaling up 5,000 rupees, and luckily you had your card with you also. So then the person at home said, what happened? Is this saman, all this stuff, is it belonging to the neighbor? No. I went to buy a toothpaste, but I saw all this. So Kama, very nice, okay? Very nice in the sense, this desire that is there, it helps us to get from place A to place B. And the desire that Bhagwan Krishna had, okay? Desire, but not a binding desire. I am teaching 17 chapters of the Gita. Okay, I mean, of course, it was not called the Gita then and so on, but I am teaching Arjuna. He has asked me a question, I am saying. Of course, Bhagwan Krishna wants Arjuna to understand what he is saying. So this talk, oh, I must not have desires, well, the Devatas have desires. And as long as it's not a binding desire, there's no problem. It is your glory to desire, and we must enjoy this glory that we have. In fact, later on, he further says that dharma aviruddhaha kamaha ahamasmi, that I am that desire in your heart, I am kama, okay, but that kama which is not opposed to dharma. In other words, I am that kama which is totally in line with dharma. And civilizations are built and destroyed because of kama. If it is dharmic kama, then the society can be like Ram Rajya. It can be a thriving society where everyone sees the value of dharma and follows it. So the sannyasi is pursuing fast track jnana yoga. So what does the person do? Well, most of the time the person is reading, teaching, listening and so on. Why? Because the person does not have other binding desires. All that has been resolved, and the maturity that comes from living a dharmika life is very much there. Journeys are complete in the world of artha and kama. So mind is fully available for the pursuit of moksha. But for most others, moksha is also an important pursuit, and therefore Bhagwan Krishna says, no worries, you attend 1 class, 2 class, 3 classes in a week alongside doing your swadharma. Swadharma, but I don't know what my swadharma is. Well, there is a lot to be said about swadharma, but very briefly, the roles that you have, minimum we have at least 5 to 6 roles. So you are either the father or the mother, sister, brother, daughter, son, citizen, student, professional, and so on and so forth. What are you doing to contribute because every equation, every relationship has certain joy and certain responsibilities. So whether it is me and my partner, I am committed to the growth, the welfare, the happiness of this person as much as my own, and therefore I am willing to do whatever it takes to make her or him happy and to contribute to this person's growth. Okay, so this love and affection and support which we would love to have in all our relations, there is a way how, but the person doesn't understand my love only. You know why? Because there is a dharma of the situation. If I fulfill my responsibilities to that person, the person's rights get met. In all this talk about, oh, consumer rights, oh, orientation, we're so obsessed with rights that we do not pay enough attention to our responsibilities. In fact, in this culture, we used to, earlier people would say, where are you going? I'm going for duty. Now nobody talks like this, okay? But maybe 2-3 generations ago, I am going for duty. Duty? What duty? Oh, I'm going for work. Okay? So it is considered kartavyam iti, it is to be done. Why? It is a part of my dharma. What do you mean it's a part of my dharma? Well, every person, depending on age and stage, and in different, wherever they are located, the dharma of the situation requires you to pitch in. And how does one figure that out? Because we are affected very deeply by what we want and what we don't want. No, I don't like all this. Okay, so can you give me a pizza? So cut the tomato, cut the cheese, and actually you can cut the spices also. Hey, what kind of pizza is that? No, I have my likes and dislikes, but it's not pizza then. Well, I know what I want. I have my likes and dislikes, and that's exactly how the world should revolve, and that's how the world should be. So the mastery of mind, that living a life of dharma, artha, kama can give, that is possible in the lifestyle of a karma yogi. The maturity for the sadhya, which is moksha. A lot of people in the spiritual world will get confused because they don't know what to do. Shall I do mantra chanting? Shall I go for tirtha yatra, pilgrimage? Or shall I do yoga, asana, pranayama? But why samadhi experience is not happening? Or maybe I will do shakti part. The question is, these are all sadhanas. What is the sadhya? What is the goal? You have to be clear about that. If you're not clear about the goal, then you can try lots of things, but does it take you closer to the goal? Here, clearly, 2 things that Arjuna wants to know. I want to know what my dharma is, because I am not ready to fight. At the same time, I am telling you, I am a shishya. I am willing to surrender to you, because in my eyes now you are a teacher. You used to be my buddy and my friend, but since I have discovered the shishya in me, I now see that you are my teacher, and you will help me to cross this samsara. You will help me to cross this shoka that I am seized by, and I don't know what to do about it. And so Bhagavan Krishna reveals the nature of the Atma, and also Yoga Shastra. So it is Brahma Vidya, the Gita is both Brahma Vidya, revealing the reality of who you are, alongside being Yoga Shastra in terms of how can I live an effective life of maturity, such that in time I discover the truth of who I really am. Okay, so with that, I think we'll stop for today. I'll probably do the closing prayer. and then if there are questions we can take them. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you very much, Swamiji. It was a wonderful, very insightful lecture. And I think we have got two questions. One is by Preeti. She says, people get very stressed when they face failure in life. So, what is the Bhagavad Gita's advice or teachings to how to overcome this?
Yeah, very good question. Okay. See, what we are referring to as failure is an event. And I will talk a little bit more about this tomorrow. But since the question has come up, I will address it right away. So let me give you an example, okay? I want to take a bus to get to work. I am on the other side of the road and the bus stop is on the opposite side. So there are four possibilities. Possibility 1, I cross over. As soon as I reach the bus stop, the bus comes. The result that I want is equal to what I expect. I can call it success. Second option, I cross the road and then I find that the bus has just gone. Then I ask around, do you know when the next bus is coming? And they say, oh, during lockdown, the frequency is very bad. You will have to wait for a good 1.5 hours. So, my God, this is what I will call failure, okay? That it's actually not a failure, but general understanding that the result I get is much less than what I expect. I'm not ready for it. I thought I was going to get it. I didn't get it. What the hell? Third option, I cross the road and then I find that as I'm waiting at the bus stop, one of my very close friends is driving by in his Mercedes Benz and saying, you know what, I'm just going to where, he asked me, okay, where are you going? And I say something and then he says, I'm also going there, come, I'll give you a ride. So now the result is much more than what I expect, in the sense that I am going now in nice air-conditioned comfort. The fourth type of result is where I was crossing the road, then that's all I remember. Then 2 days later I wake up in the hospital and start asking fundamental questions. Where am I? Who am I? What am I? Because I had an accident. Okay. Now, two types of results when I get equal to what I expect and more than what I expect, we are all very happy with. No problem. It's when an event happens that I don't expect, I don't want it to happen. Let's say I lost a job, it is a failure, correct? So now I have to understand that with respect to any action, okay, any action, these four types of results are always possible. So what you are referring to as a failure, which means that I get less than what I expect, it's going to happen sooner or later. The universe is not against you. Karma is limited and karma has these four types of results. So step 1 is we accept that there will be a situation where I get the results much less than what I expect. Okay. Then what is step 2? Step 2 is, of course, I'm stressed out. I didn't want this. I worked so hard for it. I wanted to get married in this lockdown and now all plans have gone for a toss. Okay. So now, from where are these results coming to me? because this law of karma is there, which actually is connected perhaps to the next part of next question. That law of karma is impartial, and where there is karma, there is Bhagavan. So all laws, all principles are Bhagavan. We will discover tomorrow. Okay, but very quickly, suppose you create a video game. Yeah, you're an innovator, entrepreneur. You create a video game, and in that video game there are many possibilities. There are different people who play, and they of course get a lot of scores, and then sometimes they lose and so on. For the person who is in the video game, who's playing the video game, oh my God, I lost. But for you who has created this video game, there is no failure or no success. Why? Because actually the possibility of failure is inbuilt, and what we are referring to as failure is really my karma phala coming back to me. Okay, so we have to be able to see this, and when we are able to see that all the results we get is really from Bhagavan as prasada, I'll be talking more about it tomorrow, then we are prepared even before the result comes, because that's the mastery of mind that I have managed to discover and cultivate. So it's very easy to not be stressed. Okay, even if you are stressed, no problem, you offer all the stress to Bhagwan. Okay, that see, you put me in this situation, now you please help me to handle it. There are ways and ways that are present to handle stress, but the most important one is to develop or see an attitude that I am receiving karma phala, results of my karma, and I begin to see it as prasada. Okay, so more about it next tomorrow. Then I think I can read, why do we have to come to life again and again? Why we decided to be a part of this game of Maya? You tell me. To remember in one point who we really are. So for what? Okay, again good question. The reason we are born again and again is because of our karma. Okay, so Manushyatvam, the status of being a person, a human being, is a blessing. Why? Because it is a unique combination of punya and papa, and therefore until I see that I was never karta, never the doer of karma, never the bhokta, in other words, when I discover the Atma, then this cycle of birth and death and birth and death is going to stop. Why we decided to be a part of this game of Maya is because of karma, that there's so much karma standing in my account, both punya and papa. So because of punya, I get a lot of favorable, pleasant situations in my life, in the form of a supportive people, opportunities for education, good health and so on. Of course my effort is also involved, but it's largely punya. And then all the suffering that I experience is because of my papa. So this sharira is a bhoga ayatanam. It is a tenement, it is a counter for me to experience and exhaust my karma. So then the question would be, then how many lifetimes I have to take to exhaust my karma? Well, this lifetime should be enough. Why? Because what is the cause of karma? The cause of karma is desire, binding desire. What is the cause of karma? Okay, why do you want something? Because I want it to complete me. I may also say, like Tom Cruise said, you complete me. So then I want something to complete me because I feel incomplete. Why? Because I have not discovered who I am. So the reason, the cause of all this karma and karma, all this binding desire and karma, is avidya, not knowing who I am, that I am complete in and of myself. Atmani eva atmana tushtaha. So I am content in and of myself. That is my very nature. I have not yet discovered that, and therefore this karma brings me here into this lifetime, and we cannot remember who we are, because the avidya that I have, it will be spirited away only because of knowledge, and that has to come from a guru. So there's no way I can figure out who I really am unless I am taught like how Arjuna was taught by Bhagavan Krishna. Okay, can I recommend readings for a beginner in Vedanta? I would suggest you pick up The Value of Values by Swami Dayananda Saraswati. I think it is available on Amazon, or you can look at Arsha Vidya Research Publications Trust. Should be available there. Then the next one I will recommend is Morning Meditation Prayers, again by Swami Dayanandji. Then there is another short book called The Teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. You can Vision Books, okay, Vision Publications. And then the fourth book I will recommend is, I think it's called Vedanta, the Fundamental Problem and Solution, or something like that. Okay, again, it's a Vision Books publication. So these books will be fantastic for a beginner in Vedanta. And then of course, if you think you have a little commitment, then I would suggest that you join a class where you also have the opportunity to ask questions. Because the thing about Vedanta is that the primary method is Shravanam. It is not Pathanam. The Upanishad also very clearly says you have to listen to the teachings and being in touch with the Guru. That's the traditional method. So you can definitely get some general knowledge, some basic things in terms of reading, but after a while you will find that you will pick up a lot of confusion also, and then you need to go to a Guru to understand. Okay, then one more question. Don't we feel a bit more comfortable pursuing jnana only when artha is taken care of? Absolutely right. I agree with you totally. Swamiji touched upon this briefly, but I am a bit uncomfortable with this. Shouldn't we pursue irrespective of our financial position or security? See, the point is, you need to have a sense of relative fulfillment for you to discover what is absolute fulfillment. Okay? How will you gain relative fulfillment? You are married, you have children. By doing your swadharma in relation to all of them, which also includes pursuing artha so that they are taken care of, you have developed the maturity for jnanam. Otherwise, you will come to Bhagavad Gita and say, give me some mantra so I can make more money. Because artha is valid. That's what the Veda says, okay? Artha is a valid pursuit, and Lakshmi is sacred. Our culture worships Lakshmi. So Lakshmi, resources and wealth in all forms is very important because it can benefit society. It can solve world poverty. It can give healthcare, education. So artha has a place in the scheme of things. There is a tendency for us to look down on artha. That's not correct at all. When I have the maturity that I've done my swadharma, I am doing also, and I have a mind that is mature, relaxed and alert, that now I have the adhikaritvam for jnanam. So it takes place like a flash. We need these pursuits to mature. If it is hasty, okay, there are a lot of young people who don't know how to manage their different relationships. They run away
And then they will read some Vedanta saying, I am not the body, I am not the mind, and all that. And then they start to float in some cloud. And then they become mess of their lives. Why? Because they are not ready. That jnanam requires viveka, objectivity. If I have divided my life, this is spiritual. Jnanam is spiritual. Washing the dishes, cleaning the toilet is not spiritual. I'm sorry, you are not understanding according to what the Sampradaya says. What is it? That your whole life can be worship. Why? Because all that is here is Ishvara. Any karma can be worship, and you prepare yourself with the karma such that your swadharma is your offering to Bhagwan, and that jnanam that is there prepares me to see when it is revealed that Tattvamasi, Shvetaketu. So the nature of that that Bhagwan to whom I have offered all my karma, that Bhagwan is me, I can say, yeah, that's true. It's true, and that's why the Shastra says it. So when we talk about jnanam, we have to see that the process of preparation is where most of our time and effort needs to go. Jnanam is not a process. Jnanam is instantaneous. Okay. But the process of preparation is very important. Suppose at the age of 21, you have enough vairagya and you say, you know what, this artha doesn't matter to me. I'm willing to go live as a sadhu. I don't care. Then you have the adhikaritvam. Don't bother about artha. But what is it that will give us the relative fulfillment will be different for different people in different cultures and different according to age and stage in life. So we have to see that. Okay. So we meet again next tomorrow, right? Same time, 4:30. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you again, Swamini ji. And thank you everyone for attending.